Hello and welcome to Hempfield Happenings. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Gretchen. This past month, lots of exciting events have occurred at Hempfield, such as homecoming, school board meetings, and league championships.
But this particular show will have a different focus.
That's right. For the next half hour, we will be talking about all things related to our school district budget.
We will start talking about state funding, how it works and how it affects our school's funding, as well as taxes and how it directly affects the lives of families living within our school district.
Next, we will talk about expenditures within the school district, such as the PSERS pension, which directly affects teachers, transportation within the school district for both public and private school students, as well as extracurriculars and how programs are being maintained despite budgetary concerns.
Then we will talk about creative ways our school saves and makes money.
Finally, we will be hearing from 5 high school students to learn about how the school district budget directly affects them. This is Hempfield Happenings.
To start off the show, we will be discussing Hempfield's income.
State funding is a significant portion of the district's budget.
We spoke to State Representative Ryan Almond to learn how money gets from the state to your local school district.
The first step is the whole process is the governor comes out with his budget proposal. That usually happens in February or March, typically in February of the year. So he'll have the opportunity to come out and present a budget to the General Assembly. And that will be his general appropriation for 2015-2016. Included in that will be a overall funding for K through 12 education. This past year, the budget that we adopted was a total about 10.6, nearly $10.7 billion that was appropriated for K through 12 public education. That funding is then distributed to your local school districts. We have 500 across the Commonwealth by formula. And of course that state funding, then there's federal funding that our school districts receive that's appropriated from Washington, D.C. And then of course there's also local tax dollars through the local property tax that's brought into the school district. And all of that together provides funding for our schools across the state.
Marilyn Niley, Hempfield's Director of Finance, discussed how state funding affects the district.
State funding is usually somewhere around a quarter of our overall budget, 25-26%, in that kind of range. Sometimes there's a direct tie. For example, there's a subsidy for employer FICA taxes for Social Security, Medicare costs, and for the PSERS retirement. And that subsidy is calculated based on 50% of the district's actual costs. So there's a direct tie there. We know what that subsidy is going to be based on our actual spending. Other things are not entirely as clear, and I'll use special education as an example of that. It's a direct line item of funding from the state, but there is no direct calculation of what are our expenses versus how much money do we get from the state. One of the biggest concerns that I typically talk about is the uncertainty each year of what the state funding is going to be.
We'll start to talking to the board, do presentations in February, March, and April. And in May, the school board has to approve our final budget for the next year. Meanwhile, the state hasn't decided what it's doing.
So we adopt our local budget with the best guess that we have, the best estimate that we have on what that state funding is probably going to look like.
One cause of the recent discrepancies in Hempfield's budget is the collapse of the PlanCon system.
PlanCon was a system established by the state to help schools invest in buildings and infrastructure.
School districts have various stages, various steps they must follow to receive their reimbursement.
2 years ago, the state was underfunded in the Plan-Con area, and so at that point they stopped it. They said, we're not going to start any new projects, we're not going to provide funding on anything until they go back and figure out how to redo it. We're still stuck in that time frame right now. They did, here a few months ago, start to say things that were in the pipeline. So for us, Landisville Intermediate Center, East Petersburg Elementary School, and Farmdale were all built, started through the process, had all the approvals, but no reimbursements were being made on any of those buildings. So we were caught in that, okay, you can go ahead, but we don't know what you're going to do funding-wise. So over the last 2 years, there's a couple $100,000, probably about $450,000 in total that we should have received from the state that we haven't. And a long term, obviously when you talk about 3 buildings and about $45 million in construction, and 10% of that is $4.5 million. So we're looking at $6 million over the next 20 years that should be coming back from the state. And how is that going to come? And if it doesn't come, then what are we going to have to cut or adjust to make that?
State funding is an important part of Hempfield's budget, but the majority of the district's income is generated by taxes. Taylor Harnish and Duncan Brady reported on this source of revenue.
Taxes in Hempfield School District are rising year to year.
But this problem has also occurred in many districts throughout the state.
I'm State Representative Mike Sterla, and I represent the 96th Legislative District in Lancaster. I help formulate what it is that we as Democrats stand for, and then try and promote that within the caucus and out into the community. The main reason for taxes is to fund programs. I mean, the biggest part of the state budget is for education. Right now in the state of Pennsylvania, we're down around 30% of the funding costs that the state supplies. So that leaves 70% for local school districts to raise with local taxes, and that's in the form of property taxes. When the new administration came in, the governor cut about $1 billion from education. That meant that those school districts were sent less money. We also had passed legislation that said they couldn't increase taxes more than a certain percentage. So the result was that they had to increase class sizes, lay off teachers, and raise local property taxes as much as they could. This is an investment in our future. And if I don't have the best educated students, they aren't given a good chance to compete in a global market.
When we increase taxes, we do it when it's absolutely necessary. There are a lot of costs that we do not control. Act 1 limits the amount that a school district can increase taxes. We cannot raise taxes more than 2.2% from where they are now. So state taxes do affect every school district.
I live in Columbia Borough in a house that's 230 almost years old. I also own 2 more houses that each have 3 apartment units in it. So I have a perspective of a homeowner and of being a landlord for 6 units. You have to charge a lot of money for your rental units. The taxes in Columbia are high compared to Hempfield. It takes a community to raise a kid. I should feel good paying this tax because I'm educating children, and I'm a teacher. I should want to educate children. I see a lot of people who might have bought a house in Columbia and lived there who move into Hempfield, just like over the line. They have a Columbia address, but they'll move into Hempfield School District for the housing and the taxes.
State and local taxes affect school district teachers. Joey and Kathy learned how these teachers were also affected by Hempfield's budget.
The budget is a hot button issue right now. In fact, that's why we are doing this show. We wanted to educate you, our viewers, how staffing has been affected.
We did reduce our teaching staff by probably about 40 positions over the last several years. And that has not been without pain. We have students in our high school who couldn't get their first choice on some of their classes. We have seen class sizes go up in some places. So it's going to be difficult to really continue cutting staff because you still have all these students and they need to go somewhere and they need to be educated. One area in particular that's a little bit different than the rest is special education. In some areas, there are quotas of how many students you are allowed to have in a class with one teacher. And if you go over that quota, you have to hire another person. In a business, if the business is not doing well and you're not making as much money, then what you do is you tend to lay off some employees. We do not have that luxury. We cannot furlough for economic reasons.
The administrators and staff also agreed to a pay freeze, which was the first voluntary pay freeze in the state of Pennsylvania.
Administrators volunteered to do it to help the district in their budget situation, and then I know the teachers union also then voted, and they also took the pay freeze.
Like all other public school districts in the state, Hempfield pays teachers more than just a contractual salary.
The PESERS is the state educational retirement system. And that is all about the pension system for anyone who works in a school district. In the recent economic downturn, just like a lot of individuals' 401k accounts had taken a hit, so had the PESERS account for the state. And the other problem is that for a number of years, the state did not put in the money that was their obligation. So it would be like you and I deciding, well, I'm just not going to pay that bill anymore.
We face a $50 billion unfunded liability with regard to our pension system. And that's not the fault of our teachers. That's not the fault of our public sector employees. It has been, I think, frankly, the failure of the legislature. That is squeezing our ability to provide for programs and for students.
The health care is paid for by a combination of the district and the employees. The employees contribute an amount of money toward the premium. The employees also pay co-pays. So for example, if I go to the doctor, I have a co-pay I have to pay for myself out of my pocket, and then the district picks up the rest.
Above all else, it's important for the people of Hempfield to work together.
The districts who survive the best and continue to thrive are those in which the staff, the board, the parents, and community members are all working together. And if we work together, I believe there's nothing we can't solve. The more people, average citizens, get their voices heard, that puts more pressure on everyone else to do something. So it's not good enough to simply identify the problem and say, here it is, we all know it's a problem. We need to get action on these problems.
Another large expense for Hempfield is transportation. Mandy Picciani and Aaron Hart learned more about these costs.
Good afternoon, Hempfield Transportation. Derek Frank speaking. How may I help you?
There are many regulations regarding how Hempfield transports students. For instance, Hempfield doesn't have to provide transportation. If Hempfield does provide transportation, they have to provide for private schools within a 10-mile radius.
STA, Student Transportation of America, has offered to service our district with brand new to 1-year-old buses, propane buses, at no cost premium to us. This year, since we do have a new contractor, brand new buses, it was an opportunity to renumber all the buses and re-examine every route. But in the past, a bus has average cost our district with fuel included over $40,000 a bus. In examining every route, most every route changed. Bus stops, students are asked to walk farther this year than they have in prior years, and there are fewer bus stops this year compared to last year.
Rhodes Energy helps provide propane for Hempfield. It helps cut fuel costs.
Rhodes Energy was started in 1917 as a provider of kerosene. And over the years, we have taken on all new sorts of fuel, such as gasoline, kerosene. We also sell propane. We provide natural gas, and we're a full HVAC provider. We can do service of installation at homes and replacement of units in homes. The contract that we have with Hempfield for this year and next year is to provide 200,000 gallons of propane for the school buses. That may be more or less than what they will actually need, but we're in the area of about 200,000.
Rhodes Energy has been great working with us as a team, making sure to keep things up and running, making sure the pump and everything is working good for us. They're always a phone call away. If we have any problems, they're here to make sure that the buses are always filled and topped off to make sure we can fulfill getting the kids to and from school every day.
So is it enough? Obviously, transportation can't make up for the whole budgetary gap that we are facing as a district, but it is certainly going to help. Compared to what my budget is this year, compared to what it should look like next year, it looks like transportation will be able to see a $1 million reduction a year in expenses.
I think that Hempfield's decision to go to propane is a step in the right direction. I believe that overall it's going to save the school about $1.9 million over 5 years. So that's a great first step. I think the continual look to cut costs where it makes sense is a great move, and you got to be constantly looking at where you can have efficiencies while not compromising the education for the students.
We do have spare buses. Our spare buses cover two things. They help us with our sporting events. Buses that go out to load the sports that go to the different schools, usually around the 2:30 to 3 o'clock time frame. We use our spare buses because the regular buses are out taking the high school kids and the elementary kids home. So we have those extra buses to cover those needs.
Extracurriculars were affected in a major way. Carly and Frankie explain how.
Because the district provides bus transportation for extracurricular activities, this has caused a cut in extracurriculars themselves, such as the band not being able to play at away games, drastic cuts to the theater program, and activity fees being raised in athletics and clubs. One of the most dramatic cuts Hempfield has seen this year was the elimination of the fall play.
It was definitely upsetting. Hempfield has been lucky enough to have such a strong theater program here. A lot of the other high schools in the area only offer 2 shows a year. And a couple of years ago, we offered as many as 4. First, the spring play went. This year, we lost the fall play, and it was just very detrimental. But the school board and Dr. Becker, they looked at the numbers, and it really had to deal with the numbers. Fall play involved the least amount of students. It brought in the least amount of patrons to see it. And unfortunately, it just fell by the wayside and it had to get cut.
It did affect me personally, cutting fall play, because I was very much so involved with it. So it hurt a little, but they are making strides in trying to come up with other opportunities so everyone can be a part of something at Hempfield.
While the district has been cutting several programs and expenses, they have been balancing it through an increase in the extracurricular income through a fee that just started a few years ago. The activity fee here at Hempfield was one of the few ways the district decided to bring in money. Hempfield High School Principal Dr. Wilbur Stout elaborated.
The activity fee, I think, has been in place for about 3 years now, but up until then, I mean, there was no fee to play any of our sports or participate in any of our activities here at Hempfield. I believe that fee was raised. I think it's $50 per activity right now. But I need to share that $50 by no way even comes close to covering all the expenses associated with running a sport or an extracurricular program after school. The athletic budget is about $1 million, so, people think about the cost for this activity fee. I think we generate about $50,000. So out of $1 million budget, I think $50,000 comes from these activity fees. But again, the Hempfield School District budget is $110 million. So a $1 million athletic budget is literally less than 1% of our budget. So even if we cut all the athletic and extracurricular budget tomorrow, we would still have problems moving forward.
So although extracurriculars have caused many expenses for Hempfield, they are still an important part of the curriculum.
I think extracurricular activities are a very important part of the school experience because it helps people express what they like to do and also gives them a chance to get involved in the school with other people.
Oh, I think they're so important. I've met so many friends through my extracurriculars, people I wouldn't have met otherwise. They've helped me break out of my comfort zone a little bit in the best way possible, and they've just been a really important part of my life, and I'm sure they have for a lot of other people too.
When you're in an extracurricular activity together, you hang out a little bit more, you become like a little family. You're the Minithon family, the dance theater family, the musical family, and it's truly neat to see students who normally wouldn't get to know each other because they have different classes. They're coming together in these extracurriculars and getting to know each other, which is awesome.
So whether you're on the field or on stage, or in any other activities, the budget for extracurriculars is affected by all. However, the district will keep moving forward and trying to find ways to save as much as possible. Now here's Luke Mondock to tell you how.
If you've ever been at Hempfield High School's football field, you've probably seen signs like this hanging around. But what are they exactly, and what purpose do they serve toward our school?
You might not know, but these signs bring in money from sponsors through companies like Market Street Sports.
Market Street Sports Group is essentially the high school sports marketing company. We started working with Hempfield about 8 years ago when Hempfield contacted us after they purchased a video board in the stadium, and we kind of showed them how they could use that video board to advertise local clients, whether it be panels on the video board or actual video on the board itself or advertising slates on the board itself to help pay for the board. And when we started having these conversations, we kind of hit on the idea that we could sell naming rights to the different fields and facilities at Hempfield to local businesses, giving them one large sign at the field, naming the field after them in return for an investment on that sponsor's part. The board then agrees to do a myriad of other marketing elements for that sponsor, and it's a win-win. The sponsor gets advertising at the Hempfield games and a very focused demographic that they're looking for the Hempfield students and families, and the school district gets revenue that it needs to fill in the gaps where maybe some state funding has been removed.
In addition to sponsors, Hempfield also brings in money through PTOs, booster clubs, and the LEC Haven program, as well as a preschool class that is run in the Hempfield High School.
First of all, we have 4 different classes, so there's 20 students in each class. So we have about 80 students in our preschool program. We have a 2-day program and a 3-day program, so the tuition will depend on what class you're in. But overall, we make about $30,000 from our tuition. Well, our expenditures are our supplies, which would be, construction paper and glue sticks and those kinds of things. We spend about $5,000 a year on that. We make about $22,000, I would say. It actually goes to a general district account fund.
As you can see, Hempfield is always trying to introduce creative ways to raise funds without raising taxes. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Luke Mondock.
Well, we've heard about how our school district gets funding from both the state and taxes, as well as expenditures within the school district, and how extracurriculars have been affected. Here now is Mrs. Shannon Zimmerman to talk with 5 high school students that are involved in a variety of extracurriculars.
The students we have on this panel are John Seegers, Olivia Paduzzi, Kylie Schaefer, Joel Pletcher, and Michelle Rebman.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm Shannon Zimmerman, Director of Communications for Hempfield. I'm here today with a wide range of school students to discuss their feelings on our school budget. What do you know about the budget? John, we'll start with you.
I know the budget's been pretty tight lately. The school's trying to work their way around all the obstacles that they're facing this year, but I haven't had too much to complain. I haven't been affected by it that much as of yet.
Okay. We'll jump over to this side of the table. Joel, what do you know about the budget?
I know that it's very tight and that the school is trying to work things out to get it balanced. And I know that in order to do so, they're having to cut several extracurricular activities, anywhere from theater to sports to all different sorts of things.
Okay. Michelle, anything to add?
From the stuff that I'm learning, I've noticed that it seems like more arts has been more cut than sports.
Okay. What aspects of the budget personally affect you? And I'll start with you, Olivia.
The part of the budget that affected me most as a student was how the budget affected staffing and how staffing affects scheduling, because Hempfield High School currently runs on a block schedule and has for the past 4 or 5 years. But due to the tight budget, they might have had to switch back to 9 periods a day next year. And as a junior, having done 3 out of the 4 years of my high school career in block scheduling, it would have been a really, really drastic and difficult change to go back to 9 periods a day, because it would affect how colleges saw my transcript when I was applying, and it would just be a really hard transition to make.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the block scheduling some more, Kylie? How it has impacted you and the thought that maybe it would go away with some of the staffing reductions?
Yeah, well, when I first heard about block scheduling going back to the regular 9-period school day, I was concerned because I enjoy spending class, talking to my teacher, getting to know them like more on a personal level than I would without block scheduling.
Great. It's good feedback to have. What are your biggest concerns about the budget? I think Joel will kick it over to you to start.
My biggest concern is that things that students rely on, such as busing or certain activities that they rely on to express themselves in certain ways, if they're cut, then what happens is that the district is taking away from a student's ability to express themselves in a public setting, and so that often causes troubles.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's important that students have extracurriculars because everyone has their different strengths, and so they need to find an outlet where to apply their strengths, and that's not necessarily always in the classroom. So it might be on the stage or on the field. So I think that extracurriculars really should get at least some money out of the budget so that somehow students can find their strength.
Sure. What extracurriculars are you involved in?
Personally, I am involved in dance theater in the spring, and I'm also a part of National Art Honor Society. I'm also a member of the yearbook club. So,
great. Yeah. And John, you? What extracurriculars?
I'm involved in lacrosse and varsity club. Varsity club obviously hasn't taken that big of a hit because they bring in a lot of their own income, and lacrosse hasn't done much yet. But at the middle school level, it's dropped down to club. I hope that doesn't happen with the high school level, but with the way the budget's been working out, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And Michelle, are you worried that certain activities will get cut or downsized?
Like for one, I'm in marching band, so something in the arts, everything music-wise, it's very important to me. So hearing that the fall play was cut, that's something that I wanted to try out for, and I can't do that now, and it's my senior year. So that's a downside. And marching band, we can't go to away games, so we can't support our football team. And if they win or lose, we can't be there for them when they're away.
So what's your biggest concern about next year? Joel?
My biggest concern is related to the block scheduling. I'm just starting to get used to the schedule that seems to flow very nicely, and it runs very smoothly, and it all works very well, and I have lots of time with my teachers to be able to learn and grow in certain areas. And if the time is cut so that I have 9 classes a day, then I won't have that amount of time, and it'll cause problems in my classes.
There's going to be lots of changes and probably lots of decreases in what the opportunities we get to have. So I just worry for the future of like my younger sibling will not have, or any of the younger students will not have the same opportunities that I had.
Okay, thanks for your time. And now back to Gretchen and Rachel.
Thanks, Mrs. Zimmerman. You and the students brought up some important concerns.
Make sure you watch Hempfield Happenings next month, where we will be discussing the Landisville Education Center
and common assessments. Remember, if you have any questions about our school district's budget, you can tweet at Hempfield.
For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Gretchen.